This is all about inside out, not fear of the world.
Yeah.
It's about building your own universe and involving all your clients in it as well when appropriate.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Push's Safe Spaces series. I am Cate Murden, and I am the CEO of Push. And welcome to this new series where we ask leaders and high-profile talent that we know and love to let us into their safe space. Oh, look, there's my dog in the background. And to help us understand how to better create them at work and at home. I mean, in my opinion, anything that's got a dog in it is immediately safer. So a safe space is more than just a physical space. It can happen anywhere, at any time, between different people. And it's the kind of place, I think, where people can really connect, and it allows people to ask the right questions and to feel really comfortable sharing as well. And my company, Push, is on a mission to create a lot more of them, because I think at a time when we're all feeling a little bit more disconnected, it's probably exactly what we need. So without further ado, let me welcome my guest, the amazing Mr. Jonathan Durden. Now, whilst I've known of the inimitable, there's a lot of inimitable, amazing Mr. Durden for quite some time, his name was infamous in the hallowed halls of media. And we hadn't actually met until we both did a speech at the 50th birthday of a mutual and much loved friend of both of us. And I was immediately struck about what an incredible raconteur he was. I've since met properly, and I was blown away by not only his stories, the stories that he shared, but also how excited I felt when I left him. And for me, I think that both of those things are absolutely crucial for being at the heart of safe spaces. So I thought he'd be the perfect guest for our video series. And then, you know, when one mere Google search for his name throws up author, board member, co-founder, and ex-Big Brother contestant, you know you're in for an exciting ride. So without further ado, hello, Jonathan. How are you?
Hello, Cate. I am fabulous. My grandson kept me up all night, so forgive the bags under the eyes, but
oh,
come on,
let's
do this thing.
Let's do this
thing.
Okay, so look, what I would like to know is a combination of things. I will talk about a combination of things that are your kind of safe spaces, and then also how you create them. And I'm very interested in particular, I think people will really find useful how you created them within your old companies as well. But without further ado, let's create our safe space. What has been on your mind lately?
Do you mean personally?
Yeah.
Because inevitably it's family.
Okay.
And, you know, things that my children are going through. And of course, that is something that will keep every parent up at night.
Yeah, of course.
And I've just had to learn how to hand things over, really, rather than become a controlling fiend about it, or suddenly go to a checkbook and just try and write some money out and hope for the best. It's actually being a practical help. Hence, my grandson's here.
I see.
And he is a misguided missile. And a real handful, and I love him. He's wonderful, but you know what I mean? It's just about being of practical help rather than making things worse or blotting it out and getting drunk or something.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think this is really interesting. I think that you've really hit the nail on the head, and I really, if it's okay, I'd like to go into that a little bit. The whole thing around the stopping controlling things, like this for me is such a massive thing. I'm the older that I get, the more I realize, the more work I do on myself as well, the more I realize that the best gift that I can give myself is to stop trying to control things. And actually I realize that when I have the greatest unease in my life, however it's dressed up, it's actually at the heart of it. It's me not getting my own way. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I'm usually the root cause of problems.
yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
I'm doing well, but it's actually my ego as well will kick in. And you know, I go back to a state where I think I'm the center of the universe, and I just have to take a deep breath, and I have to you know, work out where I can be of use and where I have no control. And timing and the universe, I don't control.
Yeah.
And I just have to hand it over and try and clear my mind and just focus on the things I can do that will be of practical help. And
Yeah.
apart from that, I can't do anything other than pray.
Yeah, I totally agree. I suppose there's two things in that for me. I think that whole point about not being able to control the external, I've never been more aware of that. I've also given up drinking. We've obviously talked a lot about this. And actually, two things for me have come out of that. The deep realization of that I don't control things and not trying to. But on the other side of it as well, I suppose it's how I show up. And I think actually the further I get away from my time that I was drinking, the more I realize how my fear, and there are a lot of them, created everything. You know, created and continues to create, and I'm seeing it more clearly than ever, a view of the world which I perpetuate the myth of fear. Like my fear creates that view of the world. I then go out with that view of the world. I then look for that fear. Excuse me. I then react to that fear, even if it hasn't happened, and then I get more evidence that that fear is true. So I'm constantly perpetuating this myth that actually, more than likely, ain't even true in the first place.
How much effort does it take to catastrophize about what might happen?
Oh,
I mean, it's a full-time job, right? And if you stop doing that and just live in the moment, if you just live in the day and start to see the world through other people's eyes and stop beating yourself up, actually, you know what? The day becomes really not just bearable, but a damn right privilege to be in. And that is, I know that sounds a smug thing to say, but I have beaten myself up for a lifetime. And if I look at everything I've done, a lot of it has been driven by fear. And in order to compensate for fear, my ego has become pumped up, and I've created a brand that is me and forgotten who I really am. So now my efforts are around being who I really am and where I can be really useful. And I get a lot out of that. I get much more out of that than puffing myself up and throwing loved ones on the fire just to get a cheap laugh. You know, I actually, it's a lesson learned. It's very late in my case, but anyway, it is what it is. But that can be applied to companies as well.
Yeah, and I think you're so right. I would wager that a lot of people will never get there. I understand what you say about the lateness. I feel not dissimilar. But I wonder if a lot of people never see that, and I think that in itself is terrifying.
Again, so I can't really do much about that.
No,
I can only say what I can say, but I'm not going to preach it. It's up to individuals to work out what works for them.
So I have a couple of questions from that. I'd love to dig in a little bit more to how much you genuinely felt pleasure or joy. Earlier in life with some of the things that happened, but I'd like to come back to that in a moment, because you just said a really, really interesting thing about companies seeing that similarly, using similar principles. I'd like to know your interpretation of it, of what you just said. But I think that and I wonder if this is some of it, I've never seen companies operating so much from fear as I do now because of everything that's happened. I think they always have, but I'm seeing it more than ever. Was that where you were going with that?
Well, in the case of PhD, which is, of course, a centerpiece of my career, with my two partners, David Patterson and Nick Halswell, less so, actually. That company was founded going in the opposite direction that everyone else was going in. So, you know, that whole zigzag black sheep thing. That was partly driven by our skills and partly driven by the fact that sheep aren't always right. And in fact, they're rarely right. That's why they end up with the roast on a Sunday. The entire market for media was headed in a direction of scale, volume, negotiation, prices, beating up media owners. Well, it was like the time of when Zenith started, and then all the big groups got stuck in. And it was just at a moment when media was starting to get interesting, to be honest. There was choice, there was technology, Sky, there was just things happening.
Yeah.
And we felt there was so much value in that creativity to give a client an edge, to make a brand live in the real world, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk.
Yeah.
And we created a company that would do that. But in order to do that, we had to bring in the best talent and empower it to make their own decisions and not be nervous of their kind of hierarchy. Again, this was very different then. We're talking 30 years ago, for crying out loud.
Yeah. So what I love, first and foremost, going against the grain and genuinely tapping into a zeitgeist moment versus going and just doing that scale piece. Because I think actually what you're talking about there, if I can pull those insights out, it's having the confidence to see something and believe it's right. But also, I think there's something in it of, rather than just looking at an outcome focus of let's go big, 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 let's do stuff that the behaviors are really right, that are taking advantage of what's going on, that feels really right, is good actions every single day, and everyone's going to enjoy more. Am I getting that right?
Yes, the whole driving force. Can I witter on for a minute?
I would love you to witter.
I'll witter just for a minute. Anyway, just before we started PhD, David and I worked at an advertising agency, and stuff happened. We were paid a fortune. I have no complaints. We felt valued from a financial point of view.
Yeah.
But one client said something about me, and I got called up by the CEO, and he said, "You're never going to work again. You're fired. You're not allowed in the office ever again." And I can't tell you all the things that we've done for the company. Basically, he accused me of going to him and trying to steal the business, which was not true.
Wow.
So I was very upset, obviously.
Of course, and scared.
And I went into the office anyway. And I phoned this client, and I held a recorder up to the phone and taped his response. And he said, "Oh no, it wasn't me. That man you work for, he hates you, blah, blah, blah. He's got it in for you, blah." So I had the tape, and I had a transcript made, and I sent it to the guy who owned the company. And the following day, he got me into his office, and he offered me managing directorship of the group. Now, I thought this was bloody weird, frankly. 1 minute I'm never going to work again. The next minute I'm running the whole thing.
Favour of the month, yeah.
And this was a big tipping point for us to start our company. One of them. It wasn't the only one. And we started a company which was all about our talent and motivation outwards. And if a client had a problem with our talent, we'd fire the client. Right? That was our ethos. And we looked for the people who were the most ambitious, or just good at what they do, or frankly funny, because we've all got to work with them.
Of course.
We had boys and girls top to bottom, 50-50, a huge gay contingent, absolutely as it should be. It made for life. Our company was a representation of real life, not as it was in media then, which was incredibly macho and blokish. And we, from our experience, learned by the mistakes of others. We put in a culture that said, look, you go forth and experiment and do the right thing. Don't be fearful of being fired for doing the right thing. Don't worry about how much money you're making. That's not how you are judged. You are judged on making a difference for your client. Now, go and express yourself. Now, of course, it's management's job. If someone's just not up to it or no good, you have to do something about it, or everybody loses respect. for management, and the company grinds to a
Right.
halt. But we created a company and an ethos and a culture where people were listened to. People had space to do what they really wanted to do and really extend themselves without that fear of somebody, having to go to my boss and ask for permission, blah, blah, blah. Didn't do any of that. And I tell you what, that was the fuel for our company. And it went from nothing to 100 million in 5 years, and now 12 billion globally with 10,000 staff. I'm not part of it anymore, but that ethos, that core,
it was the ethos,
is still there.
Jonathan, that for me is the very essence of what a safe space is about. I mean, you have totally hit the nail on the head there. A place where people can communicate, a place where people can feel listened to, a place where people can, feel like they belong, that there are others like them. The fact that a place where no idea is a crap idea, and you are talking about a group, creating a group of people that had such clear boundaries or ways of working instilled in them it was so clear what was expected. Therefore the engagement was so high and so unified, and also I think probably because you were a bit of an outlier doing things differently, there was that real misfit spirit about it as well, right? There was that challenger brand type spirit.
I'll tell you something else, that the thing I am proudest of in that company is not the amount of money it made, and not even the incredible client list, and it was incredible in no time flat. From HSBC to Prudential to BT to all of the BBC. Our first client was The Guardian, which was amazing.
Perfect, right? Perfect,
it was perfect. Again, something I can't control, completely outside our control. It was brilliant. The thing I'm proudest of is the number of lifelong friendships that were created amongst our people. And to this day, how they are all still best friends in their cliques. That's something which gives me the most pride, is I think we changed people's lives through the environment that we created in the culture. I can't claim credit for their brilliance, but I can partly claim some credit for giving them an environment in which to thrive. And there are several things we did which might be useful, which I'll tell you about if you want.
But I would love you to, but I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Because I was talking about this the other week. We did a webinar, which is all about the new era of employee well-being, whose responsibility is it? And we were talking about, obviously, psychological safety, which, as you all well know, is a term that is bandied around a lot. What does it actually mean? For me, I think it's about changing the success metric. Like, rather than the success metric continuing to be about money that we make, profit margins that we make for shareholders, blah, blah, blah. If you change a success metric to how safe people feel, or if that's just too hard to measure, how well people feel, or specifically, as you're talking about, how the friendships that we create, even if that ain't your biggest goal, if that is one of them, then that changes how we work. And at a time when you have things like quiet quitting, it feels like the right thing to be doing, because you have to put engagement as one of your top priority.
It's a means to an end.
That
is a means to an end. So if you have people that really want to spend more time with each other, have ideas and enjoy themselves, the best work happens. And if the best work happens, you make money. But it's in that order.
I agree.
If you start off with a culture which is all about making money, you end up with miserable people and clients that don't really see it.
Connect. And you I'll tell you where you end up. You end up where we are now. You end up where we are now, with organizations with deeply disengaged and unconnected people, who leave quickly. And
let me tell you one thing we did do 25 years ago now, might be 30, I don't know. We employed an in-house psychotherapist who was there to not just work with the board, but every member of staff. And their only job was to find out, because people never have time for this, find out what would make them happy. Right? People just don't have time to think about it. And quite often we just sort of default to wanting to become the managing director or the chief exec. And there's only one job like that generally, because that's the only job our parents have heard of.
Yeah.
And actually, no, we had someone who was there. She was brilliant. And we gleaned from this that people broadly fell into one of three categories. Either they were really wanted to be managing director and wanted to run the world, or this is a very simplistic view, but they enjoyed their job and their craft, but were almost ashamed to admit it because it didn't sound ambitious enough.
Yeah.
Or they're entrepreneurial, want to start their own businesses, but 99% of them never do. Because there's always a reason why you can't. Oh, the school fees. Oh, whatever. And we listened and we heard all this, and we restructured the company completely into that. So we had people who were genuinely wanting to be, manager director eventually. We had people who were good at their craft, but then we redid it so that we had 2 craft people for every 1 managing director person. Yeah. And the top of the company, you have more chance of getting to the top of the company and being listened to if you enjoy what you do, you craft. You have to leave your job to do it. And the third group, we got them to come to us as and when they had their ideas, and we would not specify what those ideas would be, and we backed them and we gave them power over it. They could call it what they want. They could run it how they want. They could, if we approved it, we backed it, and we did the P&L if necessary. It's not a problem. Yeah. And we shared profits with them all the way along. And we launched 8 companies that way. And within 2 years, those companies were making more money than the mother company, PhD. Wow. And that gives you an idea of putting your money where your mouth is. And people were listened to.
I love that. And they felt joy, right, as a result of it.
Well, they were getting what they wanted. The entrepreneurial group were getting what they wanted without the risk. And for some of them, they went on and started their own companies and left us. But that's okay. Because if you are encouraging entrepreneurs, of course they're going to go and start their own companies. But there'll be more along in a minute.
Yeah. Well, but then what you've got there, Jonathan, is someone who doesn't have a scarcity mindset, right? You've got someone who has that safety instilled within them, who's not being run by fear and constantly petrified about what might happen. And ironically, as well, if you've got another 8 companies, you've got another 8 spaces for those people who want to be MDs as well, right? That they can then go into.
But then we took it further. The PhD set up something called the Source, where everybody in the company could have access to every brief in the company in every country, in 100 countries. And in the lunch hours, it was gamified. You would contribute. Now, what would happen is you could see a kind of scale of where people are ranking. You see how you're doing compared to your boss, being listened to. And if your ideas were taken up, it formed part of your assessment. So we had people in finance in India showing real skills in account planning or creativity, being offered jobs in those areas and anywhere in the world. So that they were not only being listened to because they were contributing, they were also being listened to and monitored and offered new positions that might be better suited for their real talent or hopes.
Wow.
We also took people, I will shut up in a minute, I promise. We also found out what people's passions were, staff, right? So we had people that loved motor racing, somebody who loved opera, somebody who loved acting, for instance, any level in the company. And we also did the same for all our clients. Now, we had RADA at the time who were opposite. So we went into RADA and we organised that the people in our company who are passionate about acting, and it might be the managing director, and it might be someone, who works on reception or in accounts or somewhere really important like that, who are really frustrated actors, and put together band of people from our company and our clients, and they went into RADA in the morning and were taught and trained. God knows what they did, because I wasn't one of them. And then in the evening, they were on stage in a play in the West End, and Inspector Calls, I think, and actually acting. I mean, these are life-changing kind of hopes and dreams. Not only did it make our staff and our clients have memories that will last them a lifetime, they were bonded. And that's what client and our own entertainment should be all about.
I agree.
And at Christmas, we flew everybody somewhere gorgeous, Lisbon, Barcelona, whatever, and just went nuts for a few days, 5-star. Again, memories. We had the lowest churn rate.
Shared experience.
This is all about inside out, not fear of the world. It's about building your own universe and involving all your clients in it as well.
I love that, building your own universe. Like, if that's the goal, what do we want that to look like? And that inclusivity in that, like feeling like you're part of something. I feel like that is missed so much now.
Yeah.
Jonathan, can I ask you a question? As a leader, things that you know now when it comes to creating those safe spaces that maybe you wish you'd known then that you know now. So going back to that whole thing around control, being more accepting, or being less fearful, is there anything that you wish you'd known then or done differently?
Well, I kind of hinted at it earlier. We were quite soft at one time. Excuse me, but with we had a couple of people who were not performing. We liked them personally very much. We did as much as we could to bring them up, but they really were not in suitable roles. And we just didn't do anything about it because we liked them, and everybody else kind of lost respect for us, and we didn't see that through. We should have done more to get them placed somewhere else, or doing something. It's that kind of decision making that really management has to do. And it's if you're too soft on things like that, what ends up is you implode. Because people go, well, why am I bothering to come in and do all this when they're not, and they get away with it?
I think that's really interesting. That's very, very interesting, because I would say that a lot of the time companies will turn around to me and say, right, is there any one thing that we could do as an organization when it comes to our people skills to improve? And like there's some kind of silver bullet, and actually I think there is, and that's around communication. And what I mean by that is that because I think you're right about that softness, that kindness. I think sometimes we're really nervous about confronting things that we think is going to be quite challenging, and therefore we don't. And that impact that it has on others, but also on ourselves. Resentments are unspoken truths, right? And if you've got a shitload of those kicking around in a company, that is going to create, the resistance to doing that great work. When you do great work, you need flow, right? And if you've got these little barriers coming up, it stands in the way.
Another thing I would have liked to have done is, as a company, I'd like to have backed some of my clients and had a share in them.
Ooh,
like the garage does. It took me leaving the company to set up products you can hold in your hand, because I just felt that was a missing component for me personally. But as a company, a service agency, I would love to have extended our portfolio to include products that we launch that were ours or partly ours, that sort of thing, just to take part.
And you feel a deep investment into it, right? That gets people genuinely on board. I think that this has been a masterclass in safe spaces, a masterclass. What I have for any leader needs to listen to this. I have one question for you then, as someone who's been a leader, you know, and still leads in terms of a way of thinking, how do you look after yourself? How do you keep yourself feeling safe and well, so you can still think with such brilliance and be at your best?
I decided some years ago to have a clear head, so I gave up drinking. And that helps, but it takes work.
Right.
I say no to things now rather than be flattered, and say yes to things that I really have no business getting involved in. And
Yeah.
I do projects that are good for me, not just financially, but because I really want to do them and I'm really interested. And I have an open mind about, I know I'm 65 years old, right? So I'm not the most demanded person in advertising. Just a fact. But if I don't meet it halfway, I've got no chance. So I have an open mind, and I have to go out into the world, network, talk to people, and see if I can be useful. But I have to make that effort much more than if I was 30. And that's okay, but the pressure's on me then. I mean, when I went to Lad Bible, that was a challenge. I mean, we're
Really?
talking, well, they were all younger than my kids. They're all 22. And I was, at the time, 58. And I had to reboot my head to go into that. It's a long story. I won't bore you with it, but I would say that I learned a lesson, which is instead of blotting everything out, I should be engaged and present and just do things that I feel. I have to feel them.
Yeah.
And then I might do them. It's not just about the money.
Yeah. There's something about, I suppose, that excuse me, I think, and you said it earlier, it's about getting rid of ego in that piece as well, isn't it? In order to enable you to genuinely connect with that, connect with how you're feeling, and connect with others as
Ego
well.
is my defense mechanism against fear.
As we all have.
So if I'm not frightened, I don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that comes from a deep sense of understanding self and acceptance, right? Really radical acceptance of how you're feeling, and looking at ways of understanding and communicating that as well. Jonathan, I'm so conscious of time. That has been amazing, and honestly a true masterclass. I could talk to you for hours. There is so much more I want to talk about, but that has been, as I said, nothing short of a masterclass of how to create safe spaces for ourselves, for our businesses, and for any leader. They need to listen to this, because you know, at the heart of a brilliant business, in my opinion, is a safe space, and that comes from that leader to then create out. So thank you. You are truly wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Kate.